Good morning. I think we left off on pretty much partnerships and sole proprietorships. But here's a quick list of all the different types of business ownerships. So proprietorship, partnership, corporation, S&C or C&S, and LLC. These are the main ones that you need to know. There are a couple other ones lagging in the wind there, but these are the main types. We've already talked about sole proprietorship and partnership. Today we're going to talk about corporations, LLCs, a little bit of merger and acquisition, and that is it for this chapter. We will be having a test on Wednesday on the information. Now, the biggest thing is about a corporation is it's separate and distinct entity, separate from its owners. Where sole proprietorship or a partnership, its owners are liable. There is such thing as what we call the corporate shield. This assists owners in a corporation. So instead of if a corporation goes bankrupt, it does not go after the owner's personal assets or the shareholders' personal assets. It could in a couple extreme cases, but normally it would not go after personal assets of those of a corporation. And of course, with a corporation, we have to have more involved, what we call articles of incorporation. Let's watch this quick little video that just sort of explains articles of incorporation.
What are articles of
really
incorporation? They sound so official, and they are. Articles of incorporation are the first filing you make with the state. They are a matter of public record, which means anyone can read them. So you want them to be brief. You will include the name of the company, the names of the directors, and the number of shares you want to authorize. That's pretty much all you want to include, since it is a public document. The rest of the information you keep private and include in the bylaws for a corporation or the operating agreement for an LLC. We help you with the articles and all the other important documents you need when forming a corporation or LLC.
So when we talk about that separate legal link or entity from its owners, we're talking about the liability involved with it. Repeating myself, sole proprietorships, partnerships have a lot of liability for the owners. Where in a corporation or LLC, which is literally limited liability company, has very limited liability in what the owners are responsible for. Of course, now we're talking about stockholders. We have a couple of different corporations. We're going to talk about C corporations and S corporations. I have a quick breakdown of the difference between the two. Don't get too hung up on the different types of organizations because like it's the two different types as far as the C and the S. Because like I mentioned, we're going to have it. My main concern is to let you know that there's a couple corporations out there. Whether you need to know every little detail as far as the C and the S, don't care at this point. And of course, the C corporation has stocks and or securities, has several types, where an S corporation does not have, it has one type of stock and that is it. C corporation normally issues some kind of common stock as the basic ownership interest. So C corporation, which you can see in the comparison, is also normally more than 50 employees or 50 stockholders. You're talking maybe 100, 200, could be thousands of stockholders depending on how the stock is set up. Where an S corporation could be just an extension of a mom and pop, which means you can have a sole proprietorship turn it into a corporation so you have that corporate shield. And tax-wise, it helps out. But there's only one type of stock that is issued, and it's probably going to be normally the owner, maybe a secretary, an office manager, vice president. I mean, S corporations can be big, but don't have to be. It can still just be an extension of a mom and pop operation. It is just the type of business and what the IRS deals with it tax-wise. Of course, the advantages of C corporations, which we already talked about, is you have limited liabilities. No longer they're going to come after your personal possessions. It's permanent. It's easy to transfer and ownership. We're talking just trading stocks. Boom. I have 1,000 shares. You're going to buy them from me. I am no longer involved in the corporation. You are. Once you buy them from me. Easy to raise financial capital. Of course, we always need financial capital in any given business. And it uses specialized management because a corporation can draw different strengths from folks within its organization. Disadvantages, it can be complex to form because you got to have a board of directors and you have to have the CEO, CFO, COO, and all that stuff. Double taxation of earnings, that is a big one right there. This double taxation of earnings, hopefully we can pull this up and we'll be able to just highlight this double taxation of earnings. And what that basically means is as a corporation, the corporation makes $100,000. It is taxed on that $100,000. Now you as a shareholder, you get dividends on the shares. So now you are actually taxed on the dividends as well. So it's a double taxation. It's one of the biggest complaints for people in a corporation setting. And like I mentioned, there is a board of directors that is involved. The board of directors, they normally is elected by the stockholders. It represents the stockholders' interests, oversee the operation of the company. They normally appoint some kind of CEO. Well, some CEOs can last forever. Some go in and out of the company like a revolving door. We take a look at some of the more important CEOs in history. And again, the difference between these two, the C and the S, these C and S corporations, the C corporation is normally more than 50, it's double taxed, and it's more than one type of stock. An S corporation is less than 50, it can be just one or two people. Saves on taxes because it's only taxed as the individual. It's not taxed on dividends and corporate earnings. And of course, there's only one type of stock. And it could be only 1 share, 2 shares, 3 shares of stock. It doesn't have to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, shares of stock that a C corporation can get into. Running into the limited liability company. Limited liability company is sort of in between. It offers liability to owners and it has flexible tax treatment. The whole idea behind this is the tax situation. That's where a lot of how these businesses are set up, and exactly how do I want to report my taxes, or what am I doing with my taxes? So taking a look at these LLCs, we got to figure out exactly what are we doing. We got to file a document. We got to pay the filing fees, just like any other business. Even a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, you have to have some kind of documentation filing with the state. And the IRS is the one that pretty much determines what kind of taxation you're going to deal with. Just remember, LLCs are not necessarily partnerships or corporations. The folks in an LLC are not shareholders. they're called, or stockholders, they're more called members of the LLC. And just some quick advantages and disadvantages of LLCs. Advantages: it is a limited liability. Again, unlike sole proprietor partnerships, there's only a certain amount of liability that the owner or the member is responsible for. Simplicity and flexibility, flexible ownership are all advantages. Disadvantages: complexity of formation. All these have a complexity of formation just because it's just cumbersome to do the paperwork and get it set up and have the right people in the right places. There's a franchise tax attached to it. Limits on what firms can form. Oh, types of firms. Should be types of firms that can form LLCs. Not everybody can form an LLC. And of course, it's different in different states as well. Hence the reason why a lot of companies will incorporate, when it comes to corporation, will incorporate in states like Delaware where the tax situation is a lot more lenient on them. One other one we haven't really talked about is nonprofit. In the PowerPoint, there's a couple of different things when we talk about S corporations, as well as, but nonprofit, the advantages of a nonprofit or not-for-profit corporation is earnings are exempt from federal and state income tax. Members have limited liability, so again, the nonprofit, whoever is the executive director, is normally run by an executive director type situation. Whoever the executive director is, it's not like they're going to come after their personal assets. They are protected with some limited liability. And when we say limited liability, like I mentioned quite a while ago, there are exceptions to the rules. But most of the time, they're not going to come after your personal assets. Folks who contribute money to a nonprofit can get a tax deduction on that. Disadvantages: can't have stockholders, can't distribute dividends, can't control funds to contribute funds to a political campaign, and must keep accurate records and file paperwork to document tax exempt status. So there's always paperwork. In a paperless society, we still have a lot of paperwork, and that seems to be the downfall of a lot of these types of businesses, is ultimately the paperwork. So when getting involved with these, it may behoove you to get to a tax professional, a business professional, some kind of lawyer to draw up the paperwork for which type of business you plan on pursuing. Going on to mergers and acquisitions. With mergers and acquisitions, divestiture, they're one and the same. They're close to one another. Acquisition just buys another firm, and a merger is two formerly independent businesses to form a new one. There are a couple different types of mergers. This next slide sort of explains the difference between the two. Horizontal, meaning combining two different firms, well, two firms in the same industry. So let's take AT&T and Verizon, which would be a horror story of a monopoly, but that would be a horizontal. They're both in the same exact industry. They're combining. That would be a horizontal merger. Vertical mergers are two firms that are at different levels with selling goods and services. So a vertical merger could be one like the example that they have in the Mojo with Instagram and Facebook. Facebook is social media, Instagram is a social media, but they are two different levels of what they're supplying. One's just mainly pictures and videos. Actually, I don't know how Instagram started out. Might have just been pictures. Probably should have picked a better example. But either way, they're close to one another, but they're on two different levels. Instagram was mainly a picture app. where Facebook is a little bit more involved with pictures, status, videos. And of course, a conglomerate is combining two businesses, which are spelled incorrectly there, that they're unrelated. They're unrelated to one another. And again, we could take something like an example, two businesses that are absolutely unrelated to each other. Maybe as I'm looking around my room, HP, which is printers for the most part, computers, and let's say the auto industry. So GM wants to combine with HP. Pretty much unrelated to each other.
Let's talk merger.
These were matches made in business heaven. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 business mergers of all time. For this list, we're focusing on the M&A deals where buying parties acquired prominent subsidiaries that helped them enter into a new market and consolidate a leadership position. Though we're considering how big an individual was and how strategic the move may have been, we are excluding any mergers that ultimately failed. Our choices won't necessarily be the largest deals in history, but we will be considering unions that remain standing as a single entity today. Number 10. Pfizer plus Pharmacia equals Pfizer Inc. Founded in 1911, the rapidly growing Swedish pharmaceutical company Pharmacia showcased its first demonstration of market power with the purchase of American rivals Upjohn in 1995 and Monsanto less than 5 years later. During that time, Monsanto had been developing the anti-inflammatory drug known as celecoxib, which had been eyed by Pfizer during its final development stages. Beaten to the punch by Pharmacia, the American Pfizer announced a purchasing deal of Pharmacia as a whole in July 2002, with a transaction tag of $60 billion US. Less than 7 years later, Pfizer would agree to purchase rival Wyeth for approximately $68 billion. Today, Pfizer Inc. is worth more than twice as much at $172 billion US. Number 9. Royal Dutch Petroleum plus Shell Transport and Trading equals Royal Dutch Shell. Originally two separate entities from entirely different industries, the merge of the oil transporting company that was Shell and the Royal Dutch Petroleum Company was provoked to compete against the market's monarch John D. Rockefeller and his leading Standard Oil Company. The newly merged Royal Dutch Shell Group then quickly expanded to every emerging subfield in the industry, with more recent investments in renewable energy and power generation garnering massive public support and continued competitive profits. Despite a drop in sales in the last few years, Royal Dutch Shell stands as the fourth largest company in the world in terms of revenue and announced an agreement to purchase major British competitor BG Group for $70 billion US. Number 8. AT&T Inc. plus Bell South Corporation equals AT&T.
With Southwestern Bell, you got great connection.
Originally Southwestern Bell, the company that was later renamed SBC Communications, made its first major mark with the purchase of former parent AT&T, adding Inc. as its new corporate surname in 2005. Its next target was former sort-of sibling rival Bell South, the last of 7 regional Bell operating companies that emerged from the original AT&T's forced separation of subsidiaries following a lost antitrust lawsuit in 1982. The cost, $86 billion US. Today, the newly reformed AT&T stands as the second largest mobile phone provider in the US, with its multiple subsidiaries garnering new users through stronger contract deals and new marketing tactics, particularly by claiming to carry the strongest 4G signal of any of its competitors.
For the best coverage, switch to AT&T. More bars in more places.
Number 7. British Petroleum plus Amoco equals BP plc. Originally part of Rockefeller's Standard Oil, Amoco garnered much of its initial success due to their significant contributions to the Allied forces' gas demands in the last Great War. Putting out industry innovations such as the modern gasoline tanker and drive-through filling stations made it an attractive firm for purchase by super major British Petroleum. announcing a merge in 1998. It was the world's largest in its market at the time, with a transaction value of almost $50 billion US. Despite its massive losses following the Deepwater Horizon oil spill controversy, BP continues to stand as one of the top 10 largest oil companies in the world, with assets totaling $285 billion and with revenue streams as high as $350 billion. Number 6. Facebook plus Instagram equals Facebook.
You've closed the Instagram acquisition.
Yeah,
Can you talk about it now?
A portmanteau of instant camera and Telegram, the popular photo-sharing service Instagram was launched by developers Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger in October 2010. Virtually an Insta success, the free mobile app gained over 30 million users in less than 2 years, generating the attention of its then 5 times as popular sibling-to-be, Facebook. Acquiring the service for $1 billion US, it marks one of Zuckerberg and Friends' largest disclosed transactions. Since then, Instagram has grown to become one of the company's most popular mobile apps and has been multiplying its amount of active users extensively. That's a ton of stills.
Instagram has 130 million users, so you got to give them the advantage right off the bat. A lot of people using Instagram to share their photos, and now of course they're going to be sharing video.
Number 5. Exxon plus Mobil equals Exxon Mobil Corp.
Today, we step on the gas in a brand new vehicle with 0 kilometers on the odometer and over 200 years of experience behind the wheel.
Direct descendants of Rockefeller's Standard Oil, the successor siblings Exxon and Mobil found their way back into each other's arms a little under a century after separation. Yet another merger resulting in part from fear of being purchased by an overseas entity. The earliest talks and negotiations for the company that would emerge as ExxonMobil began shortly after BP's purchasing of Amoco. Tying the knot in 1999, ExxonMobil is now dominating its oil and gas rivals in terms of revenue. And coincidentally, aligning with its place on this list is the 5th largest in the world.
We're ExxonMobil. And powering the world responsibly is our job.
Number 4. Travelers Group plus Citicorp equals Citigroup Inc. The largest merger of its kind, this mega bank was one that showcased the old and the new coming together. The individual entities that were Citicorp and Travelers Group, founded over 150 years apart, had garnered immense success in their own rights prior to merging, with the former at one point being the largest issuer of credit and charge cards in the world.
Citigroup's stocks have hit rock bottom. The company has lost $20 billion US so far and has announced yesterday the layoffs of over 50,000 employees.
Despite some setbacks resulting from the 2007-2008 financial crisis, Citigroup continues to maintain its affluence and power as the 3rd largest bank holding company in the US in terms of assets, and as the world's largest financial services network with 16,000 offices throughout over 140 countries. Number 3. JP Morgan Chase plus Bank One Corp equals JP Morgan Chase & Co. At one point, the 6th largest bank in the U.S., Bank One Corp was the first of many greenback dominions that would be purchased by the millennial newborn that is JP Morgan Chase. After a string of successful mergers on its own, including its consolidation of First Chicago Corp and the National Bank of Detroit, Bank One's buying power had finally dwindled to a point where execs knew that selling would be its next best move. Purchased in 2004, those same properties acquired by Bank One have gone on to contribute to JP Morgan Chase's title as the largest bank in the U.S., with estimated assets exceeding $2.5 trillion. Number 2. Google plus Applied Semantics equals Google. Bringing in nearly a quarter of Google's overall revenue in 2014, the company's decision to purchase algorithm after algorithm-based entity proved not only appropriate, but uber beneficial and profitable.
Do what you love and get paid with AdSense.
Founded in 1998 as Applied Semantics, AdSense was successfully purchased by Google in April 2003 and was further developed along with Google's pre-existing AdWords to create the perfect ad-based machine. It's the reason you see the ads you do after doing 1 or 2 searches on something related to it. While other major subsidiaries such as Android and YouTube obviously play major roles in Google's internet kingdom, AdSense takes the win for bringing in a stronger cash flow than both those names combined, and for being the reason that Google was able to purchase them to begin with.
V8 has 30 calories. For that many calories, you could have 9 veggie chips. These are more chip than veggie, while V8 is a snack you can veg out on. V8, the original plant-powered drink. Veg up.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are some honorable mentions.
All sorts of different channels?
Yeah, a variety of channels. It's, it'll be your local affiliates, cable stations as well, but they have to jump on board, but this is a standard that's coming.
Okay.
We can create value for our shareholders, build a sustainable and profitable business, and fulfill our mission of helping people to do more, feel better, live longer.
We are excited about the future. Join our conversation. You can always find exactly what you want and make it yours. eBay, your shopping universe.
Two great companies, U.S. Airways and American Airlines,
are coming together to become one world-class airline, the New American.
Number 1, Bell Atlantic plus GTE equals Verizon Communications, Inc. Another one of 7 regional Bell operating companies springing from the original AT&T's dissolution. The company, then known as Bell Atlantic, made a major move by reuniting with sister regional Bell company NYNEX, marking the U.S.'s second largest merger at the time. However, it wasn't until the new millennium and the company's purchase of former parent company's longtime rival GTE that the portmanteau name melding the Latin word for truth and the English word horizon emerged, hence Verizon. With multiple subsidiaries now under its command, including its recent purchase of mass media name AOL, Verizon now stands as the United States' largest wireless service provider by subscriber and revenue numbers.
Dad, cool it with the Twitter updates, okay?
I'm sitting on the patio.
I know you're sitting on the...
Do you agree with our list? Which corporate come-together do you think dominates the competition? For more cooperative top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
And at the end of...
Another type of business we're going to flip through really quick is what we call a franchise. It's just a licensing agreement in order to use and name trademark businesses and products. I'm not going to get too involved with this one just for the fact that we have seen franchise in our classes before. I just want to pop up a screen here of the difference between the advantages and disadvantages of each. Advantage, it's less risk. You're getting into a business that's already established. Just happened to be in Erie yesterday during all this mess, picking up some food. And Steak and Shake on Peach Street is for sale. $10,000. They have a sign out there saying, invest in this franchise, $10,000, 50% profit. That's a tough call right there, because 50% profit, it all depends on where they're calling that profit at. But Steak and Shake is a nation chain. There's a nation chain of burgers and shakes, sort of like McDonald's, Burger King, and so forth. So the less risk is it's already known, it's already out there, it's already established. It has a brand recognition. Disadvantages is cost. Some mergers and acquisitions can be very, very costly. We're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to get invested into a franchise. There are some that are relatively cheap that you can dive right into, but it all comes down to if it's a service, are you going to have to build a building? Are you leasing a building, buying a building, materials to buy the building? How many employees do you have? And of course, trying to grow it within that area, which deals with marketing. We're talking about location, location, location. Where's the best location to put something? Take a look at Dunkin' Donuts up in Meadville there, putting it right where it's at. I personally don't think it's the greatest location. It's right past that red light. It's a congested area. You have people coming down from the hotel. It's a little crazy for me going in there sometimes, but it all depends on what time you're going in. And of course, if you're trying to sell it, it could be some issues and restrictions on selling the franchise. Last couple size deals with franchising. You got a lot of terms and conditions, fees and payments, training and support. The greatest thing about franchising is it's cheap to buy the supplies and food. You think of a burger, I know for myself at the restaurant, it used to cost us $1.19, I think, just for the hamburger. The hamburger by itself was $1.19. That doesn't include the bun, lettuce, cheese, tomato, labor, any of that stuff. Where the cost of a franchise burger, say McDonald's or Burger King, Wendy's, Arby's, could all be a little bit less. Well, actually, probably a lot of it less. Where their burger might be like 30 or 40 cents. So there's a profit margin of almost 70 cents right there per burger. Now, 70 cents doesn't seem like a lot, but you multiply that by 10,000 people, it ends up being a lot of money. A couple other things with franchising. Some kind of standard operating procedure to follow, conflict resolution, what happens between the franchisor and the franchisee, how do they handle their disputes, if I'm having an issue with supplies or what have you, who am I to complain to? And again, like I said earlier, location is huge in any given business, not just a franchise. Well, this pretty much covers Chapter 6. I'm going to put a couple videos on here, as well as this is probably going to be a long video ultimately. But I know from accounting, you guys are working on some Chapter 11B series. I want to make sure that gets completed first. Enjoy your day. If you have any questions, let me know.